Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman protect us. May he guide us and give us strength and right understanding. May love and harmony be with us all. Om peace, peace, peace. And good evening. We are continuing reading from the book Tales and Parables, and we're starting the section on counsels. And a lot of these are from relating experiences of Sri Ramakrishna, which is very appropriate since it's his birthday. His actual birthday, according to the Bengali lunar calendar, was Tuesday, and we're having our big public celebration this Sunday. So hope you can join us, if not in person, at least online. All right, so Atma can begin with, if you would enjoy the fun.
When a man attains the knowledge of Brahman, he clearly feels and sees that it is God who has become everything. He's nothing to give up and nothing to accept. It is impossible for him to be angry with anyone. One day I was riding a carriage and I saw two prostitutes standing on a veranda. They appeared to me to be embodiments of the Divine Mother herself. I saluted them. When I first attained this exalted state, I could not worship Mother Kali or give her the food offering. Haladari and Vridori told me that on account of this, the temple officer had slandered me. I only laughed. I wasn't in the least angry. A holy man came to a town and went about seeing the sights. He met another sadhu, an acquaintance. The latter said, "Oh, I see you're gadding about. Where's your baggage? I hope no thief has stolen it." The first sadhu said, "Not at all. First I found a lodging and put my things in the room in proper order and locked the door. Now I'm enjoying the fun of the city." Attain Brahmagyana and then roam about enjoying God's Leela.
Yeah, so there are a couple of different related ideas here. Of course, he saw the Divine Mother, but he saluted them from a distance, as he would often say. You see God everywhere, but in the tiger God, you salute from a distance. You don't, unless you're particularly good with tigers. You know, it's amazing how people that have raised a little cub of a lion or a tiger from babyhood, they'll continue a very warm relationship, although, you know, occasionally their true nature comes out. They have their wild instincts, but usually they are very affectionate to their trainer for long life. But anyway, normally we don't embrace tigers. Then this other half of the parable about the putting your things in order, that's really a metaphor for realizing God. Doing your spiritual practice is what he's referring to here. First I found lodging and put my things in a room in proper order and locked the door. So that's really a metaphor here for doing all your spiritual practices and attaining Brahmagyana. And then you enjoy the fun of God's Leela. So this is the goal, the Vijnana state, the state where you see everything and you come down from the, as he often would say, that was another parable we had, you you climb the roof on the stairs and say, each stair is not this, it's not this, I'm not on the roof yet. And then when you get to the roof, you say, oh my goodness, it's all made out of the same stuff. It's all made out of consciousness, is another way of putting it. Here he's saying that he saw the Divine Mother and everything, but another way of putting it is to say you saw everything imbued with consciousness. That's often the way the Shaivite philosophy would put it, and also the Shakta philosophy in general, that these are embodiments of consciousness. All right, let's look at what to pray for.
Well, praying to God, ask only for love for his lotus feet. When Rama redeemed Ahalya from the curse, he said to her, ask a boon of me. And Ahalya said, oh Rama, if you design to grant me a boon, then please fulfill my desire that I may always meditate on your lotus feet, even though I may be born in a pig's body. I prayed to the Divine Mother only for love. I offered flowers at her lotus feet and said with folded hands, O Mother, here's thy ignorance, here is thy knowledge. Take them both and give me pure love for thee. Here is thy holiness, here is thy unholiness. Take them both and give me pure love for thee. Here is my virtue, here is thy sin. Here is thy good, and here is thy evil. Take them both and give me pure love for thee. Here's thy dharma, here's thy adharma. Take them both and give me love for thee.
All right, let me read a couple of these footnotes. The Ahalya, the beautiful and devoted wife of a great sage named, I think that it's the print is a little peculiar here, Gawama. Indra, the king of heaven, infatuated with the beauties, seduced her, impersonating her husband. The sage, coming to know of this, cursed her and turned her into a stone. But he said that the touch of Rama's feet would restore her human form. Indra, too, received his share of the curse, as a result of which he had 1,000 eruptions on his body. Hence, he is known as the thousand-eyed god. So that's the story of Ahalya. And so she was restored, and when she was restored to her human form, when she touched Lord Rama, or Lord Rama touched her, and he was deigned to grant her a boon. She very wisely prayed just for devotion and love. And may she always meditate on his lotus feet. And of course, this next paragraph just goes through all the various pairs of opposites. So the idea is that we want to transcend the pairs of opposites. We don't want to see things as pairs of opposites. Why? Well, that's our problem. When you see things as pairs of opposites, it means you're in this subject-object world. That's, if you look at kind of a way of looking at how creation happens. Creation happens when things get split into a subject and an object. First, there's nothing but the oneness. Then the oneness wants to know or experience itself, so it has to split into subject and object. So then there's a subject that's experiencing all sorts of objects. And so if you want to get back to the blissful state of oneness, then you have to start getting rid of all those pairs of opposites and not seeing them as different. So this is what Sri Ramakrishna is suggesting, that pray to go beyond all those pairs of opposites. All right, let's look at the third section here, how to escape prarabdha karma.
Sir, How can one escape pravda, the effect of action performed in previous verse? And Sri Ramakrishna answered, no doubt a man experiences a little of the effect, but much of it is called by the power of God's canceled. Much of it is canceled by the power of God's name. A man was born blind of an eye. This was his punishment for a certain misdeed he had committed in his past birth. And the punishment was to retain with him for 6 more births. He, however, took a bath in the Ganges, which gives one liberation. This meritorious action, it could not cure his blindness, but it did save him from his future births.
And of course, Holy Mother used to say that if you, by performing japam and repeating God's name, your karma can be reduced from perhaps a broken leg to a scratch on the leg. So you still have to endure some fraction of the karma, but you can escape the worst of it, you could say, through your spiritual practice. So the power of God's name is very, very powerful, and that's why our main spiritual practice is doing japam to begin our meditation practice. All right, then, what's the way is asked in the next section.
Now you may ask, if worldly life is so difficult, then what is the way? The way is constant practice. In Kamarpur, I've seen the women of the carpenter families flattening rice with a husking machine. They're always fearful of the pestles smashing their fingers. But at the same time, they go on nursing their children and bargaining with customers. They say to the customer, pay us what you owe before you leave.
So this is the advice that you always have to keep part of your mind on God, and that's the trick. You need to, and that's not just people in worldly life. Monastics have to do that too. We have to cook and clean and do accounts and take care of the garden and do all sorts of activities. And we're not sitting in the shrine all day. So you have to learn to keep part of your mind on God. Now, of course, one way is to, if it's a relatively simple task, you can repeat your mantra, especially if it's a nice repetitive task. It's a nice kind of job to have, and you can easily repeat your mantra. Some people will be making garlands tomorrow. That's nice japam work. It's like you're making your own rosary out of flowers. Can you repeat as you put each flower onto the string? And other things, if you're stirring a pot, you can just repeat your mantra. If you're walking someplace, you can repeat your mantra as you walk. So there are all sorts of things. And sometimes you can connect your particular occupation to some type of spiritual practice or spiritual thought, some sort of spiritual ideal or philosophical idea. And these are the ways that we have to try to keep part of our mind on God. And of course, this image of making sure the pestle doesn't smash your fingers, that's we don't usually go for the fear idea of religion, but if you keep the idea that the world is kind of a distracting place, it can distract you from your spiritual practice, and keep just a little bit of fear there, that motivates you to keep part of your mind on God as you're doing things. So if we can just keep that attitude of motivation, that's really the trick. All right, so our next parable is called One Who Sees Elephant God Should Heed the Words of the Mahout God.
In a forest there lived a holy man. He had many disciples. And one day he taught them to see God in all beings, and knowing this, to bow low before them all. The disciple went to the forest to gather wood for the sacrificial fire. But suddenly he heard an outcry, "Get out of the way, a mad elephant is coming!" All but the disciple of the holy man took to their heels. But he reasoned, well, the elephant was also God in another form. Then why should he try to run away from it? So he stood still, bowed before the animal, began to sing its praises. But the mahout of the elephant was shouting, "Run away, run away!" But the disciple did not move, and the animal seized him with its trunk and cast him to one side and went on its way. Hurt and bruised, the disciple lay unconscious on the ground. Now, hearing what had happened, his teacher and his brother disciples came to him and carried him to the hermitage. And with the help of some medicine, he soon regained consciousness. Someone said, "Now you knew the elephant was coming. Why didn't you leave the place?" But he said, "Well, our teacher has told us that God himself has taken all these forms of animals as well as of men, and therefore, thinking it was only the elephant god that was coming, I didn't run away." At this, the teacher said, "Yes, my child, it is true that the elephant god was coming, but the mahout god forbade you to stay there. Now, since all are manifestation of God, why did you not trust the mahout's words? You should have heeded the words of the mahout god. God dwells in all beings, but you may be intimate only with good people. You must keep away from the evil-minded. Oh, God is even in the tiger, but you cannot embrace the tiger on that account. You may say, why run away from a tiger? It's also a manifestation of God. The answer to that is, those who tell you to run away are all so manifestations of God. And why should you not listen to them? God undoubtedly dwells in the hearts of all, holy and unholy, righteous and unrighteous. But a man should not have dealings with the unholy, the wicked, the impure. He must not be intimate with them. With some of them, well, he may exchange words, but with others, one should not go even that far. One should keep aloof from such people.
Yeah, so this is another example of what we came across in the first parable that we read, that you salute God from a distance if it's a dangerous manifestation of God, unless you're a Vivekananda or a St. Francis or an extremely powerful being that can calm wild beasts by a simple, by your simple presence. But in most cases, that's not our particular power to do, and so we need to make sure that we keep a safe distance from these things. And of course, as he says, sometimes you have to deal with all sorts of people, you might not even know that they're not a particularly good person right away, but you just, when you're forced to being with them, and you do try to see the good in them, but you try to keep your dealings with them to an absolute minimum, and go on your way and try to be with people with more spiritual outlooks on life. So these are the lessons that these parables are trying to teach us. All right. Yes, so it's a very similar sentiment to the previous one. All right, this is kind of a funny one that we're going to read. Damn, damn, damn to damn, damn.
Once a barber was shaving a gentleman, and the latter was cut slightly by the razor. Once he called out, damn, but the barber didn't know the meaning of the word. He put his razor and other shaving articles aside. He tucked up his shirt sleeves. It was winter, and said, "You said damn to me. Now you must tell me its meaning." And the gentleman said, "Oh, don't be silly. Go on with your shaving. The word doesn't mean anything in particular, but shave a little more carefully." But the barber wouldn't let him off so easily. He said, "Well, if damn means something good, then I'm a dam. My father's a dam, and all my ancestors are dam. But if it means something bad, then you're a dam. Your father's a dam, and all your ancestors are dams. They're not only dams, but damn, 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 damn to damn, damn." In the midst of company, one should be careful not to offend others by indulging in talks which they cannot understand.
I'm sure some of you may have run into incidences where if you're in a foreign country or with people that speak a foreign language, sometimes a word in English might have a different meaning to them. It sounds just like another word that might not be that great a word. Or vice versa, something that they're talking about might sound to us like a word that we wouldn't normally use in polite company. So this is the difficulty we have now that we live in such a global world and we run into so many different people with so many different linguistic abilities. It's almost impossible to be too careful. We can't know every language, but just sort of beg people's forgiveness if you say something inappropriate. And if someone else says something that sounds peculiar, you just realize, well, maybe that doesn't mean what we think it means in our particular language. Give them the benefit of the doubt. All right, brood over others' sins and you sin yourself.
The sannyasin dwelt by the side of a temple. There was the house of a harlot in front. Seeing the constant concourse of men in the prostitute's house, the sannyasin one day called her and censured her. "You're a great sinner. You sin day and night. Oh, how miserable will be your lot hereafter." But the poor prostitute became extremely sorry for her misdeeds. And with genuine, inward repentance, she prayed to God, beseeching forgiveness. But as prostitution was her profession, she could not easily adopt any other means of earning her livelihood. And so whenever her flesh sinned, she always reproached herself with greater contrition of heart and prayed to God more and more for forgiveness. The sannyasin saw that his advice had apparently produced no effect upon her and thought, "Let me see how many persons will visit this woman in the course of her life." And from that day forward, whenever any person entered the house of the prostitute, the sannyasin counted him by putting a pebble aside. In course of time, there arose a big heap of pebbles. One day the sannyasin said to the prostitute, pointing to the heap, "Woman, don't you see this heap? Each pebble in it stands for every commission of the deadly sin you have been indulging in since I advised you last to desist from this evil course. And even now I tell you, beware of your evil deeds. The poor wretch began to tremble at the sight of the accumulation of her sins, and she prayed to God, shedding tears of utter helplessness, inwardly repeating, "O Lord, wilt thou not free me from the miserable life that I'm leading?" But the prayer was heard, and on that very day, the angel of death passed by her house, and she ceased to exist in this world. By the strange will of God, the sannyasin also died on the same day. The messengers of Vishnu came down from heaven and carried the spirit body of the contrite prostitute to the heavenly regions, while the messengers of Yama bound the spirit of the sannyasin and carried him down to the nether world. The sannyasin, seeing the good luck of the prostitute, cried, "Is this the subtle justice of God? I passed all my life in asceticism and poverty. I'm carried to hell? Well, that prostitute, whose life with a whole record of sin, is going to heaven?" And hearing this, the messengers of Vishnu said, "The decrees of God are always just. As you think, so you reap. You passed your life in external show and vanity, trying to get honor and fame, and God has given you this. Your prostitute earnestly prayed to God day and night, though her body sinned all the while. Now look at the treatment which your body and her body are receiving from those below. As you never sinned with your body, they have decorated it with flowers and garlands, and are carrying it with music in a procession to consign it to the sacred river. But this prostitute's body, which had sinned, is being torn to pieces at this moment by vultures and jackals. Nevertheless, she was pure in heart, and is therefore going to the regions of the pure. But your heart was always absorbed in contemplating her sins, and thus became impure. You are therefore going to the regions of the impure. You were the real prostitute, and not she."
If he'd only read the first parable, then he would have just saluted her from the distance and let it go at that. But he didn't. He had to dwell on it. And yes, there's a bit of pride here, isn't there? He's thinking himself so much superior. And so that's really the crux of the problem here, is this attitude of superiority that he's carrying with him, and dwelling on the sin. And so he needed to heed this advice. And of course, the other piece of advice would be, "Judge not, lest ye be judged." And so these are the kinds of advice that we have to remember. Remember that everybody's situation is different, and we really can't judge people. We don't know everything they've gone through. Same thing with different cultures. Cultures can be very different, and things that are horrible in one culture are perfectly acceptable in another culture. And so we shouldn't judge people of other cultures or of other walks of life. And if it's something that doesn't seem conducive to your spiritual life, you realize that the divine consciousness is in them too, and salute them from a distance. And you don't dwell on them. You just let it go at that. All right, so we're on to truths profound. Not there, but here. So truths profound is the the next chapter, and then we have all these little parables in this chapter, and the first one is, not there, but here.
Once a bird sat on the mast of a ship. When the ship sailed through the mouth of the Ganges into the black waters of the ocean, well, the bird failed to notice this. And when it finally became aware of the ocean, it left the mast and flew north in search of land. But it found no limit to the water, and so returned. Now, after resting a while, it flew south. But there, too, it found no limit to the water. Panting for breath, the bird returned to the mast. Again, after resting a while, it flew east and then west. But finding no limit to the water in any direction, at last it settled down on the mast of the ship. What a man seeks is very near him. Still he wanders about from place to place. As long as a man feels that God is there, he's ignorant. But he attains knowledge when he feels that God is here.
Yes, the God is within. The Atman is Brahman, and it's right there. You don't have to go anywhere. Pilgrimages can have a nice effect. There's a spiritual vibe in spiritual places, so there's nothing wrong with pilgrimages. But you don't have to go on pilgrimages to realize God. It's not that God is only there. God is right inside you. And so oftentimes we think that there's just something, some place we need to go or something we need to do in order to realize God. And we have to go somewhere and be something different. But in actuality, the secret lies within, and all we have to do is turn our attention inward in order to find the Atman. And of course, this has a similar message just for very ordinary things. We often feel like it's always, the old saying, it's always greener on the other side of the hill. And so we think that, well, if we only had this, or we only had that, or if we only moved to a different place, or if we only had a different job, or if we only had whatever. And so we're constantly looking for changes rather than making the best out of the situation at hand. And so that's really a nice secret of life in general, is that make do with where you are and what you are, and do the best you can. And as far as your spiritual practice goes, know that the only place you have to seek is within. All right, so what you are after is within you. In other words, what you are seeking is within you, okay, which is obviously going along with the previous parable. So we're going to have another parable along the same lines here.
A man wanted to smoke. He went to a neighbor's house to light his charcoal. It was the dead of night. The household was asleep. After he had knocked a great deal, someone came down to open the door. At the sight of the man, he said, "Hello, what's the matter?" The man said, "Well, can't you guess? You know how fond I am of smoking. I've come here to light my charcoal." The neighbor said, "You're a fine man indeed. You took the trouble to come and do all this knocking at the door. You have a lighted lantern in your hand." What a man seeks is very near him, but still he wanders about from place to place.
I think we've all experienced things like that. I certainly have, where I think I need to go get something and then realize I've got it in a drawer right there, or I've already purchased it a couple of months ago and forgotten about it, and it's right there. So indeed, we sometimes do silly things like that, where we have exactly what we need, and somehow we think we don't have it. And the point of this parable is that this applies to our spiritual life as well. Again, just as the previous one said, that our divinity is within. We just have to uncover it. And so just as the man had to realize there was a light in his lantern that he could use, we have to realize that there's a light within us that we simply need to access and utilize. And the next one is how one can enter the mansion of God.
It is on account of the ego that one is not able to see God. In front of the door of God's mansion lies the stump of ego. One cannot enter the mansion without jumping over the stump. There was once a man who acquired the power to tame ghosts. One day, at his summons, a ghost appeared. The ghost said, "Now tell me what you want me to do. The moment you cannot give me any work, I shall break your neck." Well, the man had many things to accomplish, so he had the ghosts do them all, one by one. But at last he could find nothing more for the ghosts to do. "Now," said the ghost, "I'm going to break your neck." "Wait a minute," said the man. "I'll return in a minute." And he ran to his teacher and said, "Oh, revered sir, I'm in great danger. This is my trouble." And he told his teacher his trouble and asked, "Well, what shall I do now?" And the teacher said, "Do this. Tell the ghost to straighten this kinky hair." And the ghost devoted itself day and night to straightening the hair. But how could it make a kinky hair straight? The hair remained kinky. Likewise, the ego seems to vanish this moment, but it reappears the next. And unless one renounces the ego, one does not receive the grace of God.
So this is another version of the dog's curly tail story, which is usually used to illustrate the nature of the world in general, that we think we're going to straighten the world out, but the world doesn't get straightened out. But in this particular parable, they're using the same idea, but doing it in reference to our ego. And we think we're getting rid of our ego. But you see, the difficulty is, as soon as you get rid of your ego, you think, "Oh, I've gotten rid of my ego." And then you're right back in the same problem you were to begin with. So you have to pray for this rascal ego to be gotten rid of. And of course, Karma Yoga has the secret of one way to do that, and that's to stop thinking about yourself and don't think directly about getting rid of your ego, but simply thinking about doing things for others. And as you devote more and more of your energy to helping others, this unselfishness, as Vivekananda would point out, is the essence of religion, and the one who is the most unselfish is the closest to God. So that's the magic of Karma Yoga. You avoid this kinky hair problem of the ego. It doesn't come back because you didn't directly attack it, so your focus isn't on it. That's the trouble. If you focus on a problem, it's very difficult to get rid of it. It's like the old parable about how if you're trying to learn to ride a bicycle and there's a pothole and somebody keeps yelling at you to don't run over the pothole, don't run over the pothole, your whole focus is on the pothole. It's kind of like the other parable where the sannyasin was so focused on what the prostitute was doing, he forgot what he should have been doing. And so that's similar ideas here, is that perhaps it's best not to directly attack the ego, but to replace it with something else, replace it with thoughts. The Jnana Yogi replaces the thoughts with thoughts of oneness with the Atman, with Brahman. The devotee thinks only of God. So you see you have all of these different techniques to get rid of the ego. All right, we have time for one more. Then comes the time for action.
Do you know my attitude? Books and things like that only point out the way to reach God. If you're finding the way, what more need is there of books and scriptures? For then comes the time for action. A man received a letter from home informing him that certain presents were to be sent to his relatives. The names of the articles were given in the letter. As he was about to go shopping for them, he found the letter was missing. He began anxiously to search for it, and several others helped in the search. When at last the letter was discovered, his joy knew no bounds, and with great eagerness he opened the letter and read it. It said that he was to buy 5 seers of sweets, a piece of cloth, and a few other things. Then he did not need the letter anymore, for it had served its purpose. Putting it aside, he went out to buy the things. How long is such a letter necessary? As long as its contents are not known. But when the contents are known, one proceeds to carry out the directions. In the scriptures, you will find the way to realize God. But after getting all the information about the path, you must begin to work. And only then can you attain your goal.
Right, so this idea is expressed in other stories, like the pundit who couldn't swim, who kept bragging about how much he knew, but he didn't actually know how to swim. And so similarly here, we have, there's nothing wrong with, in fact, it's very useful to read the scriptures and to find out the how-to, but then you have to actually do the practices. And of course, it's always good to refresh our minds about the how-to, because sometimes we get lax and we forget things. And so we read the scriptures again. We find new inspiration. We find new things that we perhaps forgot about. And then we continue our practice. So unlike this note of articles that he could remember in one reading, and once he'd gotten them, he was finished. Usually our spiritual practice takes a little longer than one day, and so we might have to remind ourselves of some of those spiritual practices and their value and re-motivate ourselves, because spiritual practice tends to be a fairly long haul operation, not an overnight operation. So, all right, I think that's a good place to stop, and we hope that you'll be able to enjoy Sri Ramakrishna's birthday puja. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Filled with Brahman are the things we see. Filled with Brahman are the things we see not. From out of Brahman floweth all that is. From Brahman all, yet is it still the same. Om, peace, peace, peace.